How you doing today? So this is something I don't normally do. I wanted to do something different. I thought it'd be a little bit fun to just chat, just kind of just have a little just vibe session, with each other. So I thought, what better way to do that than smoking a J? So let's get started. Anyways, today though, to preface what's this on, I want to talk about Mars' square with Pluto, as well as Venus entering Virgo and opposing Saturn. This is going to be what I've written. I'm like, fuck. Some of it, I'm like, damn, it's paranoid shit. Okay, let's get started. So Mars squaring Pluto, right? Now with that, I think it's kind of the final nail in the coffin with Mars's descent into the underworld. Mars is kind of getting nailed into that coffin, and part of his ascent or descent to his throne is because it's in Scorpio. Part of that is that there's like a floor of dealing with kind of anger, dealing with kind of resentment, dealing with balancing things in Libra that he's got to balance, he's got to work with, he's got to deal with. He's got to recognize that like there's some things that he's dealing with Pluto. And Pluto, talking about Pluto real quick, Pluto makes small things big, big things small. Robert Hand said that. Another thing is just with Pluto, it's the boiling cauldron of human instincts. So take that into consideration with Mars and how Mars would react with that. Mars is getting really tested with his anger, with how he reacts, with how he's responding, especially with all that stuff in Libra. All eyes are on Mars. We'll see that more with the eclipse coming up. So really right now, Mars's test is to deal with the shit, be balanced, keep up, maintaining a level of decorum that other people can interact with. Mars is gonna get into Scorpio and then trine Saturn, so Mars doesn't need to worry too much right now, but Mars does need to recognize that he's got a little bit of a limit and kind of a floor of and a ceiling of what he can react with. Things are gonna get better, so don't look at things, don't look at like the final nail going into the coffin as Mars's descent into the underworld as being a bad thing, but ultimately being a good thing. Pluto will station direct pretty soon thereafter. So next, we got Venus going into Virgo. Immediately as soon as Venus goes into Virgo, Venus stares directly at Saturn, right? So Saturn and Venus. Now I think with this, we really got to think about a lot of the societal breakdowns. If you think about Virgo and Pisces, a lot of it is the monetary breakdowns of society, how things are divided in society with stocks, resources. So recognizing that kind of class issues, running into culture wars. I think a lot of the, I don't want to get too kind of hairy with this Venus opposition with Saturn, so we'll kind of keep it brief. But I just think it's something to watch out for, something to not underestimate, but also something not to dictate your inner culture at the same time, because that's a lot of what Venus is doing. We got to make sure that we have our inner culture set in stone, or at least the vision of that set intact. So yeah, right now, let's carry on to oh, whoops, my bad, wrong way. Yeah, so Now, I call this aspect the Venus opposition with Saturn flushing the culture down the drain. Kind of pessimistic. I don't actually think that it's going to be that bad, but I think we need to be careful. You know, bad times never last, but this Venus opposition, I don't want to just be doom and gloom because Saturn is in the exaltation of Venus. Regardless, though. So, I think a lot of it is going to be difficult to disintegrate from each other. Everything's in Libra, so we're getting this one-sided kind of Venus perspective with things, and we're not really seeing the real Saturn side to things unless it's through Taurus, or that Jupiter and Taurus. But once again, Jupiter replies to Venus, so I think a lot of this is like seeing things not for really what it is, but seeing the monster and wanting to take off that mask, and then wanting to take off that mask so bad that we get a little bit apprehensive, or we get a little bit carried away with what we really need to be doing. So yeah, I think a lot of this can be good. I think it can be down to earth, real, honesty, getting down to you know, the breaking down of kind of things as it is. Illusory disillusion, depend in nefarious ways that things have been, the way things have been taken advantage by the greed and self-interest of others, over-industrious desire to house and clothe every facet of life, the renunciation of the past structure of money's wealth, and the dam breaking, the watershed where nothing can be the same, the reordering of society, the great reshuffling, breaking through the seemingly pure with truths of objective numbers and data, letting go of culture wars and setting down the weapons of war. I think yeah, that's a hope. We can hope for that. We got to be honest and say, where are we at, you know, with things? Because I think that's the bigger story. Trying to figure out, this is where we are, but this is where we want to be. Trying to do both of those and hold both of those lines. Anyways, yeah, I think this Venus opposition is going to be really important, especially because it's going to be the primary focus during these eclipses we got coming up. More so during the first one, not so much during the second one. It'll be really interesting, though. It'll be one to watch. Stay tuned for that. Overall, you know, I think some remediations to do with this Venus opposition with Saturn, I kind of mentioned it on my threads post. But I think ancestor veneration, recognizing the realities of, you know, external expectations with internalized, you know, that internalized kind of mindset that we are kind of geared towards. You know, that kind of internalized, not oppression, but the internalized expectation to kind of hold that structure inside of ourselves, and how we maintain that and how we work to maintain that. With this South Node eclipses, I think a lot about how the South Node deals with being disgust, that kind of emotion, that energy, and how disgust relates a lot to pretentious, kind of, or at least kind of the idea of getting outside of like that pretentious mindset, or being pretentious, you know, either or, those kind of spectrums of not recognizing you are being pretentious for someone else, or maybe being so pretentious that someone tries to take that mask off from you and say, this is a bigger world we got. And I think that, you know, with this Venus eclipses, you know, we're looking at things from a Venusian perspective, and so I think that can be a little bit volatile in terms of like being sometimes too blunt to that, so that you're like kind of, your intelligence isn't going as fast as your awareness and your sensibility can get, because there's a certain part of Venus that can be very receptive. There's another part of it that can be also blunt, that can just be a little bit, not blunt in general, but just blunting. It can just be like, that doesn't really feel anything. You know, if you do too much niceness, it sometimes doesn't feel like anything if you do it too much. It's like wading in shallow water. You know, you're not really getting anything. So I think sometimes that's the idea that we need to remind ourselves of, to not get lost in that. To not get to not get lost in like these perspectives of disgust,
with other people and how they're living their lives, because I think that's the real problem that we're going to run into is like, oh, here's this kind of disgusting part of society, and now I'm just going to like fucking talk about it to death and talk about how disgusting it fucking is. But like, meanwhile, what good is that doing? And that's what I'm trying to talk about with the culture wars. That's why I think that it's going to be more of a kind of escape to this very critical idea of the world. This very critical notion that everything is just black and white, and you're just this, this, and this. You know, trying to break everyone down into these statistics and graph them and act like that's, you know, what life is. But like, you know, I think honestly, Dr. K, he said it best. He said, you know, statistics is kind of like revealing clothing, or like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, on a, you know, like if I was wearing like just like a Speedo, what it reveals is very important, but what it doesn't reveal is just as important. Just that idea that, you know, and I'm not like I don't think it's important to kind of get into the hairy kind of details, but just to acknowledge that, like, if we're looking at these statistics and we're trying to build a bigger picture, a worldview of what's going on, we have to recognize that the limit is really what we can and can't sense, you know, and that's kind of what we're running into with this Venus eclipses. Can we sense it? Like, can we feel it out? Or are we kind of critically, you know, doing the Virgo thing where we're just throwing our minds into it and we're not really putting ourselves involved? We're not getting ourselves in the mix of things. So yeah, anyways, hope you have a good eclipse season, gearing up for that. Yeah, some things I mentioned, I didn't list them all for this Saturn-Venus opposition, but once again, some ancestor veneration, isolation when you need it, getting out in open air, moving around. Marcelo Ficino talks about that a lot. Yeah, with Saturn, Saturn can kind of be a little bit more cold and take away the heat. So with that, you need to kind of introduce a little bit more, you know, you need to introduce a little bit more heat, a little bit more energy to that. You know, Venus being in a dry and cold sign, Virgo, as well as being in her fall, I think that makes it a little bit difficult to remediate. It kind of makes Saturn more stiff than it would make Saturn more easier to deal with, which is kind of interesting, I think, personally. Although in certain dynamics that may not be the case, you know. Yeah. Regardless, though, something else for remediation. Yeah, just being honest, objective about your own abilities to interact with people, your own values, really being honest with that and saying, what do I want from society? How do I need to be validated? Because I think sometimes with that Saturn-Venus opposition, or with that Saturn-Venus hard aspects, we need to confront these. How do we validate ourselves? What binds us to the people around us? You know, what is this contract that we're engaging in? And whether it be societal, familial, or otherwise, I think it's important to look at that, be objective. What are my expectations? What are the terms of the agreement? You know, what do I get out of this? And ultimately, because Venus and Saturn can be really good. I need to end this. I'm like rambling now. I'm like ranting, but that's kind of fun sometimes, right? But yeah, Venus and Saturn, I think they can be really good. So it is kind of unfortunate when, you know, when they're not able to like work out as well. And I think this is kind of one of those cases, just because that eclipse seems to be kind of an exclamation point from this kind of just what's going on right now. Anyways, regardless, you have a good day. Hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me, smoking with me. It's been a lot of fun. You enjoy yourself, and you have a good day.